I call this meeting of Sylvania City Council for April 4th, 2022 to order. Will the clerk please call the roll?
Mr. Fry.
Here.
Mr. Hanson.
Here.
Mr. Hanum.
Here.
Mr. McCann.
Here.
Mr. Richardson. Here. Stowe.
Here.
Mrs. Westfall.
Here.
All 7 members of City Council are present, therefore a quorum does exist. We welcome our 2 remaining people from the committee meeting. You're very welcome to stay, but we're going to move up the committee chairman's report in the agenda so that if that's what you're waiting for, it won't be at the end of the agenda tonight. With that, I invite you to join us in our Pledge of Allegiance, this meeting led by Mrs. Westfall.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
With that, we're on to agenda item 3, which is additions to the agenda. My only change will be to move agenda item 8A, which is the Streets Committee meeting, up and make it agenda item 4A. Mr. Fry, any additions?
Nothing, Mr. Mayor.
Members of City Council? Hearing none. Mr. Sanford? Nothing. Mr. Schroyer? Welcome, Chief Eubaker. We appreciate you being here in the chief's absence. And Mr. Aller?
Nothing, Mr.
Mrs. Brining?
Nothing, Mr. Mayor.
With that, is there a motion to approve the agenda as amended?
So moved. Second.
Been moved and seconded. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries and the agenda is approved as amended. And the first thing, agenda item 4A, will be the Streets Committee meeting. Recap for the official notice. I'm sorry, we'll do minutes first. I'm trying to go too quickly. All right, we do have a meeting minutes from our March 21st meeting. Mr. Fry.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'd like to move adoption of the meeting minutes for the council meeting of March 21st, 2022 as submitted. Second.
Moved and seconded to approve the meeting minutes for March 21st as submitted. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries and those meeting minutes are approved. Now, agenda item 8A, a report of the Streets Committee meeting held this evening. Mr. Richardson.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Tonight at 7 o'clock, the Streets Committee met to discuss a potential scooter program from Bird Scooters. We had all members of the committee and all members of council, as well as a number of people from the administration and the community in attendance. Michael Cavato was the representative from Bird, and he started with a slideshow presentation, stated that the goal is to improve the quality of life in a community, and he overviewed the functionality of the scooters and the logistics of bringing something like this to a community the size of Sylvania. He did highlight that Bird is not seeking any spending or investment from the city. Council asked how the system works in a city our size, and he indicated that they are in cities both much smaller and larger than Sylvania successfully operating. He indicated that 60 would be the right number of units on the streets in Sylvania at any given time, with the possibility to increase if there was a demand. They are present in over 400. This is Bird globally is present in over 400 cities. And he cited studies showing that the safety of the scooters is about as safe as a bicycle. He also indicated that using these scooters should be thought of as the same way you'd use a bicycle in the same kind of bike lanes and paths. The pricing for the user is set and not variable like an Uber or a rideshare device. There were members of the community that wanted to express their concerns. Some of them saw them as a nuisance and an eyesore. And Mrs. Capellini from the DSA stated that she believes that it's not the right time for the scooters in Sylvania due to our size. No action was taken, and the meeting adjourned at 7:50.
Thank you, Mr. Richardson. Any further comments? Mr. Sanford.
I wanted to add something. Question. Both verbally
also, all I can.
I appreciate the additions to the report. Thank you. And thank you for doing that legwork on the front end, too.
Mr. Richardson, you referred to a future committee meeting. I don't assume you're ready to set that meeting tonight?
No, not tonight. I think we'll let some questions come in, see if there's any other comments, and we'll circle back to that later date.
Thank you. Are there any other committee reports to be made at this time? All right.
Before we leave the streets report, I've received, I get probably because of the newspaper article, I received a number of comments, very objecting to the idea of scooters from a variety of sources. So not really, none of those were represented here this evening. Gotten both oral comments, email comments, messenger comments. Did not receive any supportive. Just leave it.
Council ready to move on?
Yep.
All right, let's get back on our agenda. We are now up to agenda item 5, which has to do with the Haroon Flower Hospital Ravine Traffic Signal Project. Mr. Aller.
This project is one that we typical local project.
Your report states that construction is scheduled to begin in 2024. Last meeting, when we talked about this project, you've pushed it ahead so that we have enough time for the traffic light poles to be galvanized and arrive on site prior to beginning work on the US 23 Monroe Street interchange, because Haroon will be part of the detour route. This report says you expect construction to last through the spring of 2025. Are you still comfortable with that schedule?
We corrections.
Just to put on the public record, is a modern roundabout under consideration, or is the decision already firm for traffic signal? Mr. Fry.
Given the time frame, Mr. Aller, I'm assuming that we're going to go for some incremental grants from the state on top of the CMAQ funding we've talking about this evening?
Right. I would. Final public.
Great, thank you.
We do have accompanying legislation to enter into this agreement with the Ohio Department of Transportation. You have ordinance 43, 2022 in front of you. Mr. Richardson.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I would like to introduce by title only ordinance number 43, 2022, authorizing the mayor and director of finance to enter into an agreement with the state of Ohio Department of Transportation on behalf of the city of Sylvania for the Haroon Road and Ravine Drive intersection improvement project, and I would move passage as an emergency measure.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded for passage of ordinance 43, 2022 as an emergency measure. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries, and ordinance 43, 2022 is enacted as an emergency measure. Moving on to agenda item 6. This has to do with placing highway salt bids with ODOT for the next season. Mr. Aller.
This year, this past winter, always a look at asking. Storage.
How much will we have then?
That will give us approximately. Following.
What's the most we've had?
We've had. Probably.
Who do we get salt from if we,
Well, a couple of years ago, everybody was.
yeah. I remember that.
Go to Toledo. That was.
We pay, I assume, a winter rate.
Typically, they will sell it for more.
Yeah, okay.
They may be in the. we would typically.
So we do have a nice new facility. I remember.
We do have the requirement to rotate the stock, as you've brought it to our attention in the past. That's a reason not to have too much in there.
Yeah, we certainly try to rotate it. Products. Part of the
If there's no further questions, you do have in your council packets ordinance 44, 2022 to authorize this purchase agreement with ODOT. Mr. Richardson.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'd like to introduce ordinance number 44, 2022, read by title only, authorizing the mayor and director of finance of the city of Sylvania, Ohio, to enter into an agreement with the Ohio Department of Transportation for the purchase of roadway de-icing salt, and I would move passage as an emergency measure.
Second.
Been moved and seconded for passage of ordinance 44, 2022 as an emergency measure. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries and ordinance 44, 2022 is enacted as an emergency measure. Moving on to agenda item 7, we have another street banner application this council meeting. This one is from the Sylvania schools. The banner is shown in a picture on the back of the application in your council packets. Is congratulations, Sylvania graduates. They would like to put this up between mid-May through early June, and is certainly an appropriate use of that banner location. Ms. Brining, do you have any comments about the application?
No, Mr. Mayor, everything is submitted, and it will be hung right after the Lord's banner comes down. This one will go up.
As discussed at the previous meeting, each banner takes a separate approval of city council. And we do have in your council packets ordinance 45, 2022 to approve this banner. Mr. Hanum.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I move adoption of ordinance number 45-2022. I will read by title only. Approving the banner application of Sylvania Schools, authorizing the zoning administrator to indicate such approval on behalf of the city of Sylvania. And I move adoption of ordinance number 45-2022 as an emergency.
Been moved and seconded for passage of ordinance 45, 2022 as an emergency measure. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries and ordinance 45, 2022 is enacted as an emergency measure. Agenda item 8, we've already had the Streets Committee report. Are there any other committee reports to be made at this time? Are there any committee referrals or committee meetings to be set? Agenda item 9. Hearing none, that brings us to the end of our agenda for this evening's meeting. Is there a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Second.
Been moved and seconded to adjourn. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries and this council stands adjourned until its next regularly scheduled meeting 2 weeks from tonight on Monday, April the 18th at 7:30 PM. Thank you for attending.